All right, welcome here, everyone. Glad to see everyone who could join us here in person today, and we have people watching live online as well on our YouTube channel. Thank you to all the candidates for joining us here tonight. Myself, I'm Joel Wiebe. I'm the Government Relations Coordinator over at the Peterborough and the Kawarthas Chamber of Commerce, who is hosting this debate here tonight on local business issues. I want to thank our partners, Peterborough Downtown Business Improvement Area, Peterborough and the Kawarthas Home Builders Association, and Your TV. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that the land we are on and discussing tonight is the Treaty 20 Michisagi territory in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. We offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Tonight's debate is being live streamed on YouTube. It's being recorded and will be available on our website, pkchamber.ca. It'll be rebroadcast on Your TV. We're hosting the mayoral candidates here tonight, but we did send a questionnaire to all candidates running for council. Those are also available. Their answers are available on our website. And we hosted last week 8 virtual debates in all 8 townships in Peterborough County, and those were recorded as well and are available at pkchamber.ca. So our speaking order tonight, we're starting off with Henry Clark, Jeff Leal, Brian Lumsden, Stephen Wright, and Victor Cruz. And the rules, as we get through this, we'll alternate speaking order. So Henry will start first with our opening remarks. Jeff will take the first question first, and so on as we go through. So everybody will get a chance to answer each question first, and so on. You will have 2 minutes for your opening statements. After that, we'll get into the question period tonight, and you'll have 1 minute to answer each question. Each candidate will have an opportunity to request a 30-second rebuttal, so just raise your hand, get my attention, so I know that you want to speak to it. Additional rebuttals will be at my discretion, so if we're having good, healthy dialogue here, we'll keep that discussion going. If it's just sort of going back and forth on the same ideas, we'll just cut it off and go on to the next question. So we've got a lot of questions, and we want to get through as many topics as we can. As the end of the night approaches, we'll get to our closing statements. Everybody will have 2 minutes again to wrap things up. Timekeeping, we have our timekeeper up front, and she has a yellow card to know when you're 15 seconds away from the end of your time, red card when you're out of time, and if you keep going, I'm going to interrupt you and we'll go on to the next one. So if you hit that red card, we just ask whatever sentence you're on, if you can wrap up that thought real quickly, we'd like to cut it off there again so we can keep the discussion going. And so questions tonight come from our chamber team, our partners, local businesses in the community. We've got a lot of questions to get through on my list, but if you do have a question, people in the audience here today, that you just really want to get asked, we will try our best to get to some of those questions. We did leave some cue cards in the lobby, but as well, Stu and Joe up in the balcony have more of them. You can get their attention. They can either drop them off to you with a pen, or you can approach them and get your question filled out there, and they will message those over to me. Keeping in mind that our focus tonight is local business issues, and we'll try as much as we can to stick to that. And with no further ado, let's get started. So Henry, you're up with your 2 minutes opening statements.
Good evening, and Joel, thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to begin by thanking our organizers, because debates like these are at the heart of democracy. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I will say, in my time at City Hall, I've never seen a council so desperately in need of mature, responsible leadership. The political culture at City Hall is not what any of us would want it to be. Too often, it's been built on personality and partisanship, and it seems to be burdened by controversy and conflict. I will change that. I want all councillors to work as a team to deliver a new vision for the city that will be focused on financial responsibility, affordable housing, improving the downtown, climate change, homelessness, progressive development, and the arts. It's time for mature, responsible leadership. You have my word. I will deliver that. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. Jeff.
Well, thank you, Joel, and the Peterborough the Kawarthas Chamber of Commerce and their partners for hosting this important debate this evening. It is my great pleasure to be here. Fundamental to our campaign theme, Building a Better Tomorrow Together, is a local economy that creates wealth, sustains jobs, and allows parents to secure a strong economic and social future for themselves and their children. The reality is that without a strong economy, anchored in appropriate economic growth, we'll not be able to fully address the challenges we face as a community today. In other words, it is paramount that we grow the local economy and create jobs to fund the solutions to the challenges known to us all: homelessness, transportation, public safety, the lack of affordable housing, addiction, and mental health issues. As your mayor, I will revitalize the activities of the Peterborough Kawartha Economic Development Agency and focus on creating new employment lands. Now is the time to refresh our approach and aggressively market our community, not only within the province, but indeed around the world. Peterborough has an amazing foundation to build upon. Trent, Fleming, PRHC, the regional airport, the GO Transit Link, highways 115, 35, 407, and the gateways to economic prosperity. Now we need to recruit new family doctors, build more affordable housing, expand our recreation facilities, celebrate the arts, address our public transit concerns, and revitalize our downtown core so that it can entice businesses to locate here and make Peterborough the place to invest, work, live, and play. As your mayor, I want to focus on building our tomorrow together and offer a better tomorrow to all segments of Peterborough's wonderful community.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you for having me. I started out, I've been talking to all of the business, or not all of the business owners, but quite a few of the business owners here in Peterborough. The number one concern was cleaning up the downtown core. And for that, I put together a plan. Last night, I presented this plan to the crowd at All Saints Church. As I left the church, I was called a loser, a coward, and a murderer because I presented this plan to the city of Peterborough to clean up the downtown core. Now,
Okay, we're not going to take questions from the audience.
Now, what I did, I turned around when I heard that I was being called a coward, and I wanted to know why. I had a young lady yelling at me in my face, telling me, asking me, have I ever saved a life before? And then she told me that both her parents have OD'd from drugs, and that she has saved her life by using the harm reduction program. To that, I didn't have anything to say. I turned to the next lady that was yelling at me, calling me an ignorant coward. She was an Indigenous woman. She said, $20 worth of syringes saves the medical system $7,000 in a Hep C treatment. To that, I said nothing. I turned to the next lady. It was an older lady. She was probably about 70 years old. And what did she do? She was yelling at me saying, how can you? How could you? And I said, what? What did I do? Right? She said, my daughter died of an overdose. And I said, what? What did I do? And I said, do you want them to hand out needles to the parks? And she said, yes, I do. And that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at trauma that we've got to deal with. These people need help, and we need to come together as a community and help these people. I wish I had more time to talk. Cool.
Thanks, Brian. Stephen.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the organizers for tonight's debate, those of you who are able to attend in person, and those of you who are watching online. My name is Stephen Wright, and I'm your candidate for mayor. During my almost 2 decades here in Peterborough, I've seen our city grow, and I've seen the challenges increase with that growth as well. The rising infrastructure costs, escalating property taxes, and seniors at the risk of being taxed out of their homes and very limited economic opportunities within the region. I have a clear vision, and as your mayor, I would expedite my clear vision on community safety, climate action, leading and engaging in balanced growth to ensure that we have the development in housing from estates to entry level to executive homes and affordable housing for seniors. We have a plan, a clear plan on economic development. As your mayor, within the first 90 days, we will hold an economic summit, inviting all of our partners to the table to build out what Peterborough's next economy is going to look at. We are in our third economic wave, and yet have no clear vision of what that economy is going to look like yet. You know, as a member of council, I moved the plan forward for the airport and the investment in the airport through the strategic advisory team as a means of bringing new investment dollars to the community. We will take that to the next level to ensure passenger service into Peterborough. When it comes to our downtown, it is no longer about revitalizing our downtown, but the need to reinvent our downtown. We have significant challenges with mental health, homelessness, and addiction, but we can find solutions in a caring and compassionate way. On October 24th, please vote Stephen Wright for your next mayor.
Thank you. Victor?
I grew up in Peterborough after 1 year in Toronto where I was born, and that was 61 when I was born, and around the 80s I noticed a right-wing element, an anti-socialist element rising in the air that's just been getting stronger and stronger. And I think it's important to help people with the problems today. It's important to understand how we got here. And I'm a socialist, which actually probably just confuses a lot of people because that word has been deliberately destroyed as a meaningful word to use in any discussions. But to clarify, Tommy Douglas was a socialist, and I consider myself a follower of Tommy Douglas and the idea of standing up for Canadian interests, protecting our resources and our assets, and sticking up for health care, and not taxing poor people. The Liberal Party at one point leaned a little bit toward the NDP and then campaigned in the late 80s against the GST, arguing that it's a regressive tax that hurts the poor. But then when they won the election on that platform, they didn't. And so the idea of all these expenses just piling up on poor people and organizations like the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, there's no good tax in their playbook. There's no social emergency that would legitimate a tax increase, and there's actually at least 2,000 people in Peterborough supporting that organization. So I'd like just to remind people about the principles that Tommy Douglas talked about.
Thanks so much, Victor. And just a reminder tonight, if anybody has questions or comments for our mayoral candidates, to submit those on the sheets provided up to our scrutineers up in the balcony. So our first question tonight is going to go to Jeff. And feel free tonight, we've got a lot of questions. This one is pretty short. Some of them are a bit longer. Feel free to ask for me to repeat any of these questions as many times as it takes. We want to make sure that everybody is informed on the answers that they're able to provide. So my first question is, what personal qualities do you bring to the role of mayor, and how does that play into your vision for the city? Jeff, you've got 1 minute.
Thanks, Joel. I think one of the things I could bring to the table is I've always had a fundamental respect for all views that are put forward. I've always believed in public life that nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. So you should always take the time to listen carefully, to consult extensively before you make a final decision that is in the best interest of the community. One of the background skill sets I had the opportunity to be at 3 rounds of NAFTA renegotiations, twice in Mexico City, once in Montreal, representing the great province of Ontario. And I think it's through that process that you fundamentally learn that a compromise is an honorable thing to do. And when you have that honorable compromise, you bring people together of different views and chart a common course going forward that will always benefit a community.
Thank you. Brian?
I stand for clean parks and safe parks. I'm looking for, what's your question? Let me answer your question.
We're not
Go
going.
ahead.
We're not into a format where we're taking questions from the floor.
Not yet?
Once we open it up for one candidate, we're opening up a whole different format. So we're going to keep this.
I apologize.
Thank you. But you're welcome to have
After
discussion
last night
after.
being called a murderer,
Sure.
it's just upsetting. I mean, I'm offering Peterborough an opportunity to clean up the streets is what they offered. I said nothing about not handing out clean needles at the safe injection site. I said don't hand them out in the parks where children can step on them. And there's plenty of evidence that they're not getting into those garbage cans. They're spread out all over the place. So I'm coming to the city with a vision of a clean city with a revived economy where tourists can come and enjoy a butter tart, a coffee, an ice cream without worrying about their kids stepping on a needle. Go ahead,
Right.
Stephen.
I'm just going to throw one thing in real quick. At the risk of committing you on your schedules, I'm assuming our candidates tonight probably have a few minutes to hang around after. So if people do have things that they want to have a discussion with, that would be the best time to do that. Stephen, you're up.
Thank you for the question. The one thing I know I would bring to the office of mayor is the ability to work collaboratively with those who are cheerleaders of my ideas, as well as those who are vehemently opposed to them. I've always believed that in working to the best solution for anything, you bring to the table those that agree with you and those that disagree with you, because likely you're missing something in an equation. And to bring forth the best policy positions for the city, it's good to work together. I have no qualms with taking harsh criticism, and in an age of social media, it seems to be the new way of critiquing and criticizing ideas. So I'm able to work collaboratively with anybody, agreeable or disagreeable.
All right, thank you. Victor?
I think I'm the only candidate that is actually standing up to developers and home builders. It's one of the reasons I got in the race, because I felt like Peterborough was getting paved and steamrolled over without any real say or input into what is being built. And in the meantime, at the home builders debate or whatever it was last week, I told them the premise of their first question, I didn't agree with it. They were asking me how could I help them overcome the concerns of residents that have concerns about traffic or whatever. The NIMBYs, I think they were referred to in that question, and I said I don't agree with the premise of the question. It's I would stick up for those people. I would defend red tape, but I wouldn't put up with inefficiency in the bureaucracy at City Hall. I want a mechanism to be able to look behind the scenes at City Hall without a lawsuit being risked.
Thank you. Henry? Henry, you're up.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a soldier, I learned teamwork. As a counselor, I learned to listen. As a frontline supervisor at Quaker, I learned how to look ahead and anticipate. And with all of those, I learned leadership and bring experience. That's what I would do for this city. Bring those. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So on to our next question. So Brian, you will be up first to answer this one. And this one comes from our partners at the Peterborough Downtown Business Improvement Area. Like many cities, Peterborough is struggling with robberies, assaults, break-and-enters, antisocial behavior, and damaged property, creating real and perceived fears with shoppers, tourists, employees, and the general public, as well as hurting local businesses. As mayor, what will be your strategy to take on the crisis and protect the businesses, shoppers, staff, and citizens? Brian?
Well, obviously get the drug use under control, and that's the hot spot that I'm on right now. And I understand who I'd be dealing with. I understand where the ground zero and who the people are that are initiating that that initiative. I mean, it makes no sense to me. People, come on, giving out needles to parks, I mean, they don't add up. It just does not make sense to me. I mean, regardless of who's mayor. Do you want a politician or do you want me? It doesn't matter. Stop giving out needles to parks. They don't go together. That's it.
All right, Stephen.
Thank you for the question. Our downtown should become a destination zone. And with the continued presence of police in the downtown area, I would, as mayor, increase our zoning to develop higher buildings in our downtown so that we can put more people on the streets. In order to get the investment to the downtown, what I would recommend is the removal of the ward system, so that the next council has a vision and a corporate vision on the eye of the city. I know with my 4 years on council, there were numerous occasions when budget items were approved for one area of the city and then taken apart because council said, well, it's not in my ward. We want to ensure that every councilor is looking at our downtown with the same vision.
All right, thank you. Victor.
Instead of hiring 15 more police at the same cost, I think we could hire more than 30 social workers that are expert in this field dealing with marginalized people. And more than 30 social workers could form teams and patrol the downtown 24 hours a day with a goal of helping the people and being nice to them and informing the council of what is the situation out on the streets and what do they need. And that's a short-term solution. The PATH organization, Peterborough Action for Tiny Homes, would help the homeless situation so business owners wouldn't face a urine-soaked entrance to their business every day. And I'd like to declare Peterborough's ambition to be a center of excellence for research and treatment of all these issues so that we could attract healthcare practitioners. No healthcare practitioners coming in this situation while we're in this downward slide with no solution.
All right, thank you. Henry.
To address the issues in the downtown, I think we must first identify them. Homelessness, drugs, mental health. To be able to get at that, I would be working on measures to deal with our homeless, to deal with the mental health, to get eyes on the street. Eyes on the street means greater density, more people living there, more people working there. I would be certainly looking to add to the outreach teams, police and social workers, that can really get into the issues and make certain that our downtown is safe and a place where people want to be. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff.
Downtown Peterborough should be a place where people want to live, people want to work, people want to shop, and people want to go for entertainment purposes. And one of the things I would do, certainly, as I said, to add 15 officers over 5 years to make sure that we have sound enforcement targeting those who prosper from victimizing vulnerable citizens in our community. Secondly, working very closely with Donna Rogers at Forecast, working with Mark Graham at CMHC to make sure we have those on-street teams that we can address the vulnerable population that we need to support each and every day. The other thing we need to look at is perhaps identifying Music City in downtown Peterborough to bring people down, and an entertainment center to house our great historic sports franchises, the Peterborough Petes and the Lakers, similar to what St. Catharines has done and similar to what Guelph has done to revitalize their downtowns.
All right, thank you. Move on to our next question. So, Stephen, you'll be the first up to answer this one. And this comes from our partners at Peterborough and the Kawarthas Home Builders Association. The draft official plan calls for the city to look within its boundaries for serviced employment lands. Many years have been spent trying to negotiate agreements with neighboring municipalities along the Highway 115 corridor. What will be your approach to working with neighboring municipalities to create more serviced employment land, or do you plan to focus within city boundaries? Stephen.
Thank you for the question. I recall reading a 2018 and 2019 Standards & Poor's perspective on economic growth in this region. And one of the identified issues in there was your transportation to this region, given we're off the 401 corridor. In order to grow the economic base here, there will be a working relationship with Cavan Monaghan to simply have the lands across by our airport service, getting that investment dollar back to this region. A fair deal, as my friends Jeff and Emma will call it, is something that's a misnomer. What's fair to me may not be fair to you. But what I will do as mayor is commit to getting it done, servicing the land. The job in Cavan Monaghan is of economic value to Peterborough, and anything of economic value to Peterborough is of great economic value to the region.
Thank you. Victor.
I would like to contain development as much within the city's boundaries as possible to protect the farmland. I'm outraged about the Lily Lake development, 5,000 houses. I live on Fairburn Street and will suffer that traffic coming down Fairburn Street. It's the only outlet other than Atkinson Road and the only urban development in Western civilization to have a development like that with only 2 southbound access points to the downtown. And what a ridiculous, immoral development. And in terms of our homeless crisis, those kinds of houses aren't helping them, although the Home Builders Association will argue it is. I would like to expropriate the land from GE after making them clean it up, build a stadium there, which would revitalize the downtown, turn the Memorial Center into a hall of fame for music,
All right, Victor.
turn the Music Fest into a local music showcase.
All right. Sorry, we're hitting our time limit. I appreciate the enthusiasm, though. Henry.
Thank you. I would start as mayor ensuring that we take a regional vision. That doesn't mean not thinking about the city, because obviously as mayor that comes first. But I would want to take a regional vision. That means entering into respectful negotiations with the neighboring townships and the county, and offering what we have as our strengths, which are our services, and work with them to be able to negotiate for what they have, which is land. We have to have a mutual benefit to all in order for this region to move ahead. And that, I think, is something that I can do as mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff.
The reality is that the city of Peterborough is out of employment lands. We need to enter into respectful negotiations with our surrounding neighbors, and to make sure that you get a win-win situation. I've always believed that in fair negotiations, you could get a win-win situation. Because we got to remember, for every job that's in the city of Peterborough, that's a benefit to the county of Peterborough. And every job in the county of Peterborough is a benefit to everybody in the city of Peterborough. I had the opportunity to work with Stuart Harrison in the chamber when we worked together to make sure that the 407 was extended through the 115/35. There wasn't a period of time when that was going to be in doubt. But the natural orientation from a logistics growth point of view is southwest. So we got to make sure that we enter those negotiations, but make sure we enter those negotiations that is not the larger entity, Peterborough, dictating to a smaller energy and our neighbors around us.
All right, Brian.
There's quite a few lots in downtown Peterborough that need to be cleaned up and retrofitted. I don't know the specific buildings that could be used for homing or homes or for beds, for shelters. That's one thing that I would like to look at if I am mayor. real estate is my background, so it is something that I am bringing to the table, and that's what I'm offering. Go ahead, Stephen.
All right, yeah, Stephen asked for a 30-second rebuttal here, so all yours.
Thank you. You know, I listened to Jeff and Henry talk about further negotiations with the neighboring townships to get something done that neither could have gotten done in their collective 50 years. Within the first 90 days of taking office, we will enter into an agreement with the partners in Cavan Monaghan, private developers, and service that land.
All right. Does anyone else?
Yep. I would like to do something about the Cavan Monaghan lands as well. My position is I don't think any money should change hands. And in terms of land around the city that could be developed, not just the GE lands, the Baskin-Robbins site, along Lansdowne, the Mr. McGee's property, the corner of Hunter and Water. I'd like to impose a tax structure that penalizes landlords who just leave properties sitting as an eyesore and tax them for the potential like they do in Toronto.
All right. Jeff?
Well, in response to my friend, Mr. Wright, in fact, there was a annexation agreement put in place by the city of Peterborough and Cavan Monaghan. It had all the component pieces, and in the last vote, it was defeated. So we know there's some common denominators that are there for the basis of an agreement. Mr. Wright wouldn't know this, but in November 2017, then Mayor Darrell Bennett asked if I would get a mediator appointed, which we did, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to go in to look at common ground to see if we could get an annexation agreement.
Thank you. Henry?
Thank you. I'm very glad that Mr. Leal has discovered that we need new properties out in Cavan. When he was our MPP, I was part of the team that begged him to intervene. The government always said, oh, we want a local solution. And we kept saying, there isn't one. We need help. I wish his government had listened then, because we'd have the land now. We can negotiate. We can work with our partners respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, because you mentioned Jeff, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds here.
Well, in fact, Mr. Clark's statement is not factually correct. We had appointed a mediator in the fall of 2017 to look at this issue. And what we were going to do with the mediator come back, we had a history as a government, and the government in the 90s to legislate annexation. We actually legislated annexation between Innisfil and Barrie. We were waiting for the report for the mediator, and then we ran out of a runway because there was a provincial election that was pending.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the next question. So, Victor, you'll be up first to answer this one. The planning and approval process for building new developments can be time-consuming and uncertain. Businesses are struggling to attract talent, partly due to the lack of available housing. The province introduced Bill 109, More Homes for Everyone Act, in an attempt to streamline and speed up some of that process. What parts of the building approval process will you address to streamline development?
First of all, the purpose of Bill 109, I think, is just to please Doug Ford's corporate buddies, and that the homes that need to be built aren't the ones on Lily Lake Road, like I said. It's homes for people in need, low-income housing. And I'd like to see the city hang on to every piece of real estate and acquire more real estate and invite innovative architectural designs, but retain ownership, and with ownership, retain control of the rent that's charged, instead of being at the mercy of a developer, landlord, who meets the minimum requirement of 10 units of geared to income housing and another 90 units of market housing, where they can charge unlimited rent and make unlimited profit. There's jurisdictions that limit the profit that a landlord is allowed to make. And profit motive in a human need such as housing is immoral.
Thanks, Victor. All right, Henry?
Bill 109 offers a number of excellent tools. They will help us streamline our processes, speed up the approvals, and allow us to get shovels in the ground on a predictable timeline. Those are things that I would really want to see. And in fact, many of them are already being implemented at City Hall. We have lined up additional staff. We are going to need some more. But we know that we can start moving things through predictably. And that is what the builders and the developers say. Predictability so that they know the timeline. Every month's delay is $2,000 on the cost of a house, and that's not acceptable to the people of Peterborough.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
One of the things that I've done is search across this great country looking at best practices. And part of our campaign platform is to establish Service Peterborough. Service Peterborough will be the entity for the builders to deal with for all private sector applications, bringing together our planners, our engineering team, to expedite these applications as quickly as possible. About 4 weeks ago, I had an opportunity to chat with my friend Tim Hudak. Tim is now the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. And he talked to me about the term densification, the ability in communities like Peterborough to make sure that we modify our residential zoning to allow for the building of townhouses, duplexes, and triplexes. Because we all know one of the great things in life is we can provide those keys for a person for their first home or their first rental accommodation.
Thank you. Brian?
I've been informed that the approval process takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years. When I'm in the City Hall, I'll find out why it takes that length of time to begin with. It's way too long to get the shovels in the ground, way too expensive for the developers, and then at least at that point, if we get the costs under control, we can get some affordable housing for the people.
All right, Stephen?
Thank you for that. When it comes to streamlining the development process, Jeff, I don't think adding another layer of bureaucracy helps get homes built. We do have a service, Peterborough, it's called our planning department. What we would do is see to that the changes when applications are coming in is that the city provide educational pieces on the repetitive errors that come in with those applications, and that the city adapt all the recommendations in the DAP report, including the use of electronic submissions for plans.
All right, thank you. And we'll go on to our next question.
Rebuttal?
Yeah,
or,
sure.
Or addition?
Yeah, go for it, Victor.
Yeah, I mentioned a mechanism to be able to look behind the scene at the bureaucracy, what is holding it up, one that protects the mayor and the councilors from incurring a lawsuit, 2 lawsuits in this last term, $200,000 at least. And in terms of the, I would not put up with incompetence. One idea I have as well is to put individuals, maybe a team associated with each proposal to shepherd it through the process, and then those particular planners are accountable.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
Service Peterborough is not a bureaucratic concept. It's about bringing people together to expedite the applications that are coming in. And I'd also add, in communities that have adopted this approach across Canada, each application has a critical path. And when you develop the critical path, there are certain benchmarks along that critical path, so they make sure that applications and approvals match that critical path to get the work done.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on. Oh, Henry, yep.
Thank you. Mr. Leal is absolutely right about what he's saying, but he's late. We already have those processes being set up at City Hall, but I agree with them. It will bring those benefits and it will make things done. We have a new director in that has recognized those issues and is moving us ahead in a very positive way. And I look forward to adding the additional staff that will be the icing on the cake to really make it deliver.
All right, Jeff?
My information comes from the people in the field. When you talk to the people that are in the home building industry, the real estate industry, continue to complain about bottlenecks at City Hall. We got to get those bottlenecks eliminated, to get shovels to the ground, to get people's homes, to get those keys for homes and for rental accommodation.
All right, yep. Victor?
I'd just like to point out that Tim Hudak is a disciple of Mike Harris, and the Liberal Party kind of morphed into a version of the Mike Harris Conservatives and went ahead and privatized hydro. So bragging about being buddies with Tim Hudak and making plans on what's best for Canadians, Tim Hudak doesn't have a clue. He's a disciple of Mike Harris, who is now on the library at Nipissing University where I got my B.Ed, and I'll never give them another dollar for that insult.
All right, thank you. And we'll keep this going because that was pretty much directed at you there, Jeff. So
I'm glad it was directed at me. Earlier, my remarks this evening, I've always believed that nobody has a monopoly in a good idea. So if you're looking for solutions to problems, you reach out to everybody that you can contact to give their views, to build that kind of consensus, to move things forward. And that's my 33 years of public life. That has been the way I've always approached things. Reach out, get a consensus, listen to people that have good ideas, take those good ideas and implement them for the benefit of all.
all right, thanks. Henry, okay, I got Henry, I got Brian. I'm going to give, okay, you got one more, and then we're going to move on after this because I've seen enough hands here. So, Henry.
Hey, this is actually feeling like a debate.
Yeah, it's good. I like the enthusiasm from everyone.
I've talked to the same people, the developers, the builders, and those issues are real, and they are there. Then I went and talked to our staff, and they are working on the solutions. They are bringing forward the things I've talked about. I can't wait to see them hit the street, but they're coming because the staff recognize it, and there's a new broom in there that is really tightening things up. I look forward to delivering the service to our builders and to our citizens that they need.
All right, Brian.
Just about the 33 years of service, we're listening to the politicians. We've got the results outside of what's occurred.
All right, I've got Victor, and then I've got Stephen.
I spoke with Jeff Leal about privatizing hydro, and his explanation was similar to what he said. It was shorter, though. He makes his decisions based on facts and evidence. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, what about principles? Like the principle of protecting a public asset like hydro. Nobody will be able to come to me with a bunch of facts and evidence and make me abandon a principle like protecting public assets.
All right, Stephen?
So thank you. You know, Jeff, I don't know how many years of conversation you need. You know, having sat at the council table with an eye on what the problems were impending and coming up in Peterborough, and having sat at the only other table that could provide the funding and the direct solutions, look at where we are today in Peterborough. You know, we have some significant challenges. And when it comes to moving the development process along, you know, both what was identified by KPMG and in the DAP report were simple recommendations. We have our planning staff that don't even have the technology to accept the applications that come in.
All right, thanks, Stephen. I love this enthusiasm for housing that we have going, and we've had a couple directed at you, Jeff, so I'm going to give you one more, and then we're going to move on to the next one, I think.
Perfect.
All right.
Peterborough had experienced the same thing in housing in 1988. The then mayor of the day, Sylvia Sutherland, we brought in Les Grimbridge, former CEO of Outboard Marine Canada. We brought in new process to move it ahead and had more building that advanced during that period of time. But let's talk about electricity for a moment because I like this topic particularly. We did reduce our ownership in Hydro One from 100% to 47%. We did that to free up investment capital, to put back into the grid in the province of Ontario, to put it back in to make sure Ontario would not experience blackouts and brownouts, which would be an awful detriment to business in the province of Ontario.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. Thanks, everyone, for that. We'll move on to our next question. So, Henry, you'll be up first to answer this one. And it is, many residents and businesses throughout the region are interconnected and heavily dependent on us working as a region on things like tourism, economic development, transportation, and housing. How will you engage our partners in Peterborough County, First Nations communities, and beyond to grow our most effectively as a region? Henry.
Regional development is absolutely key to the future of this area. The lack of it has been what has held us back for far too many years. I've made a point of getting to know the leaders in the townships, at the county, and the First Nations. Many of them I count as personal friends. But the opportunity to build that connection, to work together through personal relationships, through sitting down and talking about the issues openly and honestly, I think will be the way to move us forward by looking at the shared vision, by looking at the mutual ideas and the mutual benefits. We can and must move this area ahead. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Jeff?
I've had a very long and very productive relationship with the political leadership in Peterborough County. In fact, when I launched my campaign for mayor, I was most honored that the warden of Peterborough County, J. Murray Jones, was there for endorsement. One of the things we need to do working collectively is to expand the Peterborough Kawartha economic development. And I said that there's a need to put more resources there to make sure that we market this region on a national and international basis. I've seen communities from Ontario that are on the international scene each and every day to seek out investment. We also could do that by having more diversity in this community, that entrepreneurial talent to come into this area and really showcase how we can make our community exposed significantly to the world. And secondly, I could tell you one of the great irritants in the county of Peterborough that they had no representation on the airport advisory committee, bearing in mind that if they hadn't closed Airport Road, that expansion would have never occurred.
Thank you. Brian?
I'd like to see Peterborough as an example. It's across Canada, these issues that we're experiencing. We're not the only city, but we are in a unique position where we can be the example, clean it up, and on a regional basis, we're going to attract people into Peterborough as well as the investment. As far as our Indigenous neighbors, I think it's an awesome opportunity to use this 200th anniversary of the Peter Robinson settlement and have a powwow, a large one, invite in Alderville, Curve Lake, Kawartha, Hiawatha, thank you. Bring them all in and have a powwow and start healing together and use this to build on our reconciliation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. A partnership in building out our economic base here is very important. And our economic development is regional and always has been a regional scope on it. Within the first 90 days of taking office, I do plan on holding an economic summit in ensuring that all of our partners at the table, Cleantech, Trent, Fleming, our Indigenous partners, to look at what our third economic wave can be developed and what it will be.
All right, thank you. Victor?
Well, I think the local region could be developed much more by having much better public transportation. That it's really difficult to get around. People are complaining about public transit just within the city, but if you want to go anywhere outside of the city, we no longer have the Greyhound bus, and so people just going to Lakefield is ridiculous for somebody who doesn't have a car. And so public transit linking the entire region together would, I think, open things up a lot. And in terms of the Indigenous partnership, I'm excited about the council recently signing the agreement finally to include Indigenous people in planning. And I'm very optimistic about that, and I've already reached out to them, hoping that they could maybe help with the land dispute at Mayoral Park.
Thanks, Victor. All right, we'll move on to the next question here. We've got one submitted from the audience here tonight. So a reminder again, if you have questions, we have pieces of paper. Stu and Joe are up there to handle that, and they will send me some of what's here. We may be consolidating some of the questions tonight that come in on similar themes, so we can touch as many topics as we can here tonight. So first person to answer this question tonight will be Jeff, and it is, how do you plan to bring new business to Peterborough, and what type of new business will you try to recruit? Jeff.
Well, one of the things to attract new business certainly is to have available employment lands. I Recall during the provincial election, Mr. Smith, during one of the debates, said there was an opportunity to bring 500 jobs through Mitsubishi Motors to Peterborough, but we lacked employment lands to make that happen. I've indicated that we need more resources for the Peterborough Kawartha Economic Development to do much more marketing on a national and international basis. Remember, Peterborough's in competition with the other 443 municipalities in Ontario and the other provinces and territories for new investment. I was very pleased as Ontario's Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The last project we did, we brought together a team to bring Fairlife to Peterborough. What an amazing success story. They've doubled their employment and they process 400,000 liters of Ontario milk each and every day. Food processing is an enormous opportunity to be headquartered right here in Peterborough.
All right, thanks. Brian.
Get the drug use under control. Clean up downtown.
All right, Stephen.
It's interesting to hear Jeff talk about food processing and how important that is as far as a job creator in a region with a lot of farming around us. You know, Jeff, the last food terminal that was built in Ajax, Ringer Road in Salem. You know, within our first 90 days, the plan is to look at our current supply chain coming out of COVID, see what wasn't on the shelf, and then find out who our new manufacturers are that should be in Peterborough and to aggressively pursue those manufacturers to work in this region.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Victor.
I guess could you clarify the question just
Yeah,
to be sure?
I'll read it again. And just a reminder, anytime tonight, if anybody wants more clarity on the question, I'm more than happy to repeat them. How do you plan to bring new business to Peterborough? And what type of new business will you try to recruit?
Right. Well, in terms of attracting new business to Peterborough, I think that implies that there are businesses somewhere else that we might attract to Peterborough. But I would like to see new businesses in Peterborough started up by people from Peterborough. Support them. And the businesses that exist here already, support them. Struggling, especially after this COVID crisis, but the federal and provincial tax system, the way businesses, especially small businesses, treated, I want to stand up for the small business owners in Peterborough that are struggling. It's amazing what they do. I don't know how they do it.
Thank you. Henry.
You know, for a long time, we used to say our motto was we're open for business. This city isn't. It doesn't have the land. It doesn't have the reputation. And that has to change, particularly the reputation. Because the land, we can work with our neighbors. But we have to bring the council together. We have to create an ability to work as a team and present a common vision that will welcome businesses to come to Peterborough. I would like to see businesses come here that work with Clean Tech Commons, that are research and development, that can build upon the fabulous education system and resources we have here in the town. But I do believe we've got to start with ourselves. We have to get our act together and make sure the message is out there. We want you. And then we have to have the place where you can come to.
All right, Jeff, you've got some comments on here.
Well, thanks very much. The reality is that we were fortunate that Fairlife could be built on the existing footprint of Coca-Cola Foods. We had other opportunities in food processing. We just didn't have the employment lands available to accommodate them. And also, I was heavily involved with 3 rounds of the Eastern Ontario Development Funding for Flying Colours in Peterborough, so they could expand on 3 occasions to make them an aviation powerhouse in Ontario and Canada today. And in fact, it was a decision that I made when I was on council to close part of Erskine Avenue in the 1990s that allowed Coca-Cola Foods to expand on that footprint to bring in a climate-controlled warehouse so
Thanks,
they could
Jeff.
serve all of Canada from Peterborough.
Thank you. All right. You want, Stephen? All right.
You know, Jeff, it's like listening to my grandfather tell stories of what the world used to be when I was a child. You know, the reality of it, the food processing terminal in Ajax provides over 1,000 jobs. Those jobs didn't come to this region When we were talking economic development with an eye on the future, there was an opportunity both at the council table when you were there and both when you were at Queen's Park to get the funding, get the land service, or to have an ordering council passed to get an annexation done.
All right, Jeff.
We actually pursued that, Stephen. And if you want to talk about records, get your facts straight because your facts are wrong on this one. At the request, I don't want to go through with Daryl Bennett. We worked hard to bring in a mediator to get annexation done. And I take no lessons from you on helping Flying Colors, and helping Coca-Cola Foods, and helping many other industries in Peterborough to create employment during my 15 years that I was in here, and included building a new hospital, the Kawartha Trades and Technology Center, and we could go on and on and on this record.
All right, we've got a lot of passion for getting new businesses to Peterborough. I like this. All right, were you?
I'm gearing up for a rebuttal, if I may.
Sure.
You know, we talk about it now, Jeff, with all of our young graduates coming out of college, university. What they see are $15 an hour part-time jobs that have no benefit, no regional support, no regional economic growth. You were at both tables to have made this happen, and it didn't.
Just a second,
Well,
Jeff. I got Victor next.
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
that's
no,
just not correct.
hold
And I
on.
tell you, Mr. Wright, if you
Jeff?
want to know, we had our young men and women in a training facility that was built in 1960 on McDonald Street. I made damn sure that we had the most modern technology training center in Canada when we built it at Fleming College.
Again, I love the passion here tonight about business. I would just ask that we respect the orders so everybody has the appropriate time. So Victor was next. Victor?
I just wanted to point out that I don't want to put up an image that would deter people from coming to Peterborough. I want to make Peterborough an attractive place so that we don't have to bend over and give them tax breaks or something so that they will come to Peterborough. I don't think we should go begging. I think businesses, if they want to come to Peterborough because of what Peterborough is, that's the kind of business we want.
All right, thanks. I love the discussion we're having here tonight. Moving on to the next question. So Brian, you'll be up first to answer this one. We've sort of touched on this in a few people's answers, but many businesses are on the front lines dealing with the devastating effects of the opioid epidemic, as well as the shortcomings in addressing mental health and homelessness. What will you do to work with the province to address these pressing public health issues? Brian.
Clean up the drug use.
All right. Stephen.
You know, the opioid epidemic and our drug use on the street is a very complex issue. You know, the city of Peterborough will have an opportunity to purchase a healthcare facility once a new extended care in the north end is built. I think it would be a great opportunity for us to look at long-term in-resident treatment program while working with our neighbors on a regional strategy, no differently than we would with economic opportunities, to find a solution. The issue is affecting every one of the municipalities around us, and we might have to work together as partners to find a solution.
All right, thank you. Victor.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Many businesses are on the front lines dealing with the devastating effects of the opioid epidemic, as well as the shortcomings in addressing mental health and homelessness. What will you do to work with the province to address these pressing public health issues?
Well, I mentioned already my ambition for Peterborough to declare its ambition to be a center of excellence for the research and treatment of all the problems that we're facing and that the business owners are facing. And so attracting the healthcare practitioners, the experts that can help is really the best way. And in the meantime, I mentioned as well the patrol of people that could go and do their best to help people that are finding barriers to the shelters, help them to overcome those barriers. And they're, in terms of helping the people and getting them from downtown, the CTS, the Greyhound Station, is just a first step, but the goal would be, with a center of excellence, to move the problem to the outskirts, to the university and the college, where there's housing that could be built for them.
All right, thank you. Henry?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes,
please, Joel?
absolutely. Many businesses are on the front lines dealing with the devastating effects of the opioid epidemic, as well as the shortcomings in addressing mental health and homelessness. What will you do to work with the province to address these pressing public health issues?
The province can be a powerful ally to the commitment that I would bring to the issues as mayor. We have homeless, we have drug addiction. A simple thing, we have a safe injection site that has no treatment part to it, and that's absolutely critical. I would work with the province to find the resources to help our local agencies, Canadian Mental Health, Forecast, and so forth, to really get out there. The downtown teams that I've worked on, which is a police officer and a social services, can really help connect and deal with the issues for the people that are suffering. In that way, we can help the downtown, and that way we can help our businesses thrive and make people want to be there and live there as well. Thank you.
All right, Jeff?
In 2021, there were 44 suspected overdose deaths in the city of Peterborough and the county of Peterborough. That's absolutely heart-wrenching. Those are 44 individuals, 44 lives, 44 individual stories. One of the things we need to do is to have treatment beds. In the spring of this year, the community of Sault Ste. Marie got $18 million for 20 treatment beds. We need, at a minimum, 20 treatment beds in Peterborough. We do know that there's a center that's being developed on the Trinity United Church property. Our provincial member of parliament, Mr. Smith, is an advocate of wraparound services. We should make sure that we are working with him to make that happen. And certainly with the phenomenal work that's done by Forecast and CMHC, those resources, matched by additional resources by the city of Peterborough, can go a long way to match and reduce the opiate crisis that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the next.
Sorry, just
Oh, yeah, sorry, I missed that.
I neglected to add, in terms of declaring that ambition to be a center of excellence, it would also hopefully bring with it provincial funding, federal funding, and the attention of healthcare practitioners around North America that are struggling to find the support they need. And so, in terms of working with the province and the federal government, I also wanted to point out, last week there was a headline that people might have missed. The federal government is actually going to start controlling all substances like cannabis, alcohol, and tobacco. So we need to start preparing for that.
Thanks, Victor. All right, moving on to our next question. So first up, Stephen, you'll be the first one to answer this. The city has made it clear it plans to address climate change. It's going to take leadership from government, but ultimately the private sector will play a key role in meaningful greenhouse gas emission reductions. How should the city engage local businesses to work toward climate change goals? Stephen.
Recently, the council passed a resolution for funding through FCM for building retrofits. I believe that working with our local businesses as well, that we can provide additional funding for building retrofits as well.
Thank you. Victor.
Well, I'd like to take advantage of an organization that can do an audit of city services and give advice on what we can do more in terms of every development going forward. Yeah, the greenhouse, the footprint, not just the gases, but all the pollution I would like to see minimized. And myself, the water, the Otonabee River is, in terms of the climate, it's part of the environment, and I don't like the way media divides the environment up into different parts. And then I'd like to see people talk about pollution and how fossil fuels are just bad because it's not good to breathe, whether it causes greenhouse gases, also the mercury from fossil fuels in the oceans is...
All right. Thank you very much. Henry.
Climate change is a crisis that we are all facing. I was very pleased to bring forward the climate emergency, which Council supported, and also to find the money through the budget process to have a fund to leap on opportunities when they come forward. But to get local business involved, I believe we have to do more education as to what it all means. We need to encourage them to put rooftop panels on their buildings. We need them to encourage to look at their fleets and even perhaps to provide incentives to their employees to switch to alternate fuels. We have to realize that the deadline is coming soon and there's not a whole lot of time to make the changes that we have to do. So public education, working together, and the city leading by example. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff.
Of course, one of the most tangible ways you see the impact of climate change is your premiums you're now paying for your home insurance. I've put together a plan called the Electric City 2.0 Climate Change. I will be asking the City of Peterborough Holdings, Inc. to renew their mandate for generation, run-of-the-river generation, to reduce GHGs that we have in our atmosphere. Secondly, I would extend their mandate in battery storage. They have the Little Lake Generation Station, but with battery storage, then you could take intermittent electricity and put it back into the grid at peak times. And thirdly, I'd like to emulate what is being done now by the OPG, Ontario Power Generation, and Microsoft. The ability to trade credits. So businesses in Peterborough could buy credits from the City of Peterborough Holdings, Inc. on the generation side, and then guaranteeing an agreement in 1999 where City of Peterborough Holdings, Inc. would return over the City of Peterborough $4 million every year as their dividend from their business activity.
All right, thanks. Brian.
Clean up downtown, get the drugs under control, and heal as a community.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next question then. So, Victor, you will be up first to answer this one. According to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, more than a quarter of businesses in Canada report rising costs in real estate, leasing, and property tax as a barrier to growth. What will you do as mayor to address the rising costs of having a physical business location? Victor.
Well, housing is the main thing people are talking about because you see the people without a home on the street, but business owners face the same rising costs that are caused by the profit motive. And I'm not completely against making a good living, but unlimited profit in a need, and the need for reasonably priced accommodation for businesses, it's an important need in a city. And so we need to take action against landlords that don't respect the needs of the city or the landlords. And so I would like to support businesses in making sure landlords treat them decently, better leasing agreements, and just better everything.
All right, thank you. Henry.
Would you repeat it again?
Absolutely, yeah. According to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, more than a quarter of businesses report rising costs in real estate, leasing, and property tax as a barrier to growth. What will you do as mayor to address the rising costs of having a physical business location?
The greatest opportunity for growth is in your own businesses that are already in your community. And I think we can work closely with them. I was part of the council that lowered the taxes for commercial and industrial, and we brought it way down, and that's had a significant impact. I do believe that by working with our businesses to show them that we value them, to change our processes, to increase and speed up our approvals, we can help them grow. We need the land, we can negotiate that. We can work with our partners and be able to help them thrive in a way that they had perhaps not expected, but by having a city hall that is responsive, open, and really wants to help them succeed, we can do it.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
One of the roles of a mayor in cooperation with the Peterborough Kawartha Economic Development Corporation is to make sure on a monthly basis that they target so many local businesses to visit. One of the best ways I found out about growing corn was to be in the cornfield itself and talk to the farmers. And this should be an opportunity to find out what the businesses need, what their challenges are, and how you can be flexible enough to respond to their concerns. Make them available of government programs at the provincial and federal level, and to make sure, work with them to make those applications to expedite them on their behalf. There is no question in my mind that we need to look at our tax ratios. Right now, it's about an 80-20 split. And we do know that on the residential side, that has become a deterrent for young professionals moving into this area, because we know that Peterborough will prosper when that young talent comes into our community.
All right, thank you. Brian?
Clean up downtown, get the drug use under control, start healing as a community.
All right, Stephen?
Thank you. Yeah, when it comes to the notion of tax holidays, I'm in favor of tax holidays for any new business establishing in the community that meets a specific number of new employees and more than minimum wage jobs. You know, Henry talks about the rebasing of the commercial and industrial taxes of 1% per year over the last 4 years. It's counterintuitive when you're rebasing commercial industrial tax and shifting it onto the residential tax burden. The approach I would take would be somewhat of just giving the tax holiday for those employers that are coming to the community, creating new jobs.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
The only thing I would say about tax holiday, I think it's illegal under the Ontario Municipal Act. Bonusing in Ontario is illegal, and that's always been a challenge to try to get around that. Municipalities in Ontario have tried to get around it by having acres available in industrial parks at less than market value. And this is something that's been tested and upheld on many occasions with regards to bonusing in the province of Ontario.
All right, thank you very much. Stephen? Yeah?
You know, Jeff, through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, councils do get to lobby the provincial governments on policy changes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Victor?
I guess I'm just frustrated that we don't get a better answer from Brian Lumsden. It didn't address the question at all. And in terms of
All the business people that I spoke to, they need to clean up downtown.
I'm talking now.
Just a second.
In terms of his idea that he's harping on cleaning up, he doesn't offer any clue that he understands how to clean up. And his lack of understanding how clean needles do help is unbelievable.
All right.
What you have to do is make sure that there's access for the needles to be disposed of properly.
Thanks, Victor. Just a second before you go, Brian. I'm just going to ask that the audience just remains quiet if we can. It's tough to hear some of the conversation up here. And just in fairness to everyone and that we can all properly engage, I just ask that we all be respectful. So regardless of where people agree or disagree with each other.
I apologize
Brian?
for stepping up to be mayor here. I thought you wanted a cleaner city. If you want to give out needles, by all means do it. If this is the society, you're more than welcome to be a part of it.
Okay.
Right? They're smashing purple heroin. The heroin's tainted, but we're going to give them clean needles to hit that purple heroin. Does that make sense, people?
No purple
No, it
heroin.
doesn't. And
Get
you're
rid of the
telling me-
purple
All right, Victor?
heroin. Get rid of the purple heroin.
Did you want another 30 seconds, Victor?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, that's...
Yes. Yeah, purple heroin is a problem, and a clean drug supply will eliminate that problem. And as I mentioned last
give
week,
that
a
to you.
headline in the Toronto Star, the federal government is finally going to start distributing illegal substances, including opioids, and regulating them the way they do tobacco, alcohol, and cannabis. Would anybody want to go back to cannabis being criminalized again? I think everybody recognizes what a great thing it was for it to be legalized.
All right. And we're straying a fair bit from the original question here, but you have been referenced, so I'm going to give you one more shot here, Brian, and then we're going to move on.
Everyone I spoke to wants a cleaner downtown, and that's what I'm looking at. And as far as handing out the needles, that's what I have a problem with. Not with the harm reduction, it's the actual handing them out in a park. I think I am a strong advocate for a clean, safe park for kids. All right.
All right, thank you. We're going to go on another question.
Sorry, I just have to, please.
We're a long way off the business barriers question here.
But the idea of
can I
not
just-
giving a
no.
needle to somebody in the park is
I'm going to
they'll
give you
have
the
another
opportunity at
needle
the end,
and
Victor.
get hepatitis.
So everybody has 2 minutes at the end. If you've got things that are not on topic with their questions, I love the discussion, and that's the appropriate time. If we don't get to it tonight, you've got 2 minutes at the end, so just ask for that. So we've got another question along the same lines of barriers to business, and again, this comes as a suggestion through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce that rising inflation is ranked as the #1 barrier to business, and that includes input costs, rising wages, transportation. We've all felt it in various ways. Recognizing this is happening across the country and around the world, what is something the municipality can do at the local level to provide some relief to businesses and residents? Sorry, Henry, you're up first on this, and I can repeat the question.
To provide relief from inflation within the city is beyond the powers of a municipality. What we can do and are doing is looking at the costs that we have to pass on to the taxpayer. We look for every efficiency, every possible revenue, every way to do business better. In that way, we can keep the costs down. We also need to attract new growth to the community, responsible, respectful to the environment, and so forth. But that can help spread the tax base and the cost out. We did move from almost 200% ratio on commercial and industrial versus homeowner and brought it down to 1.5. That was a huge gain. Talking to the local business owners, they were able to hire employees and expand because of what we did. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
Inflation certainly is in the purview of the Bank of Canada and the Government of Canada, who set inflation targets and try to maintain them. But one of the things that we can do at a local level, and I spent some time talking about it earlier, Service Peterborough, and an expedited way of handling zoning applications and building applications to get them through the process and get approvals. Because every day that an application is held up that doesn't get approved, that's an inflationary day. That means that you're not getting your project, not getting shovels in the ground, and if you can't get shovels in the ground, you're delaying your skilled workforce that you need to commence on the construction, build homes, build other facilities within Peterborough. And we do know, with a tight market for skilled labor, there's no business in Peterborough today that can afford to lose any of those workers as they want to move their projects forward.
All right, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, the cost of inflation is going to be hurting everybody, but as a community, you got to be watching the food banks. The lineups are getting longer. The food donations are getting less. You got to start helping each other, people.
All right. Stephen?
Thank you. There's not a great deal that we can do at the local level, but when you look at just-in-time delivery, I guess the investment in our airport addresses one of those inflationary measures for businesses that do transportation of goods.
All right, thank you. Victor?
Well, inflation basically just means that there are more poor people, and the ones that were already poor are even poorer now. And so the supports to help poor people need to be strengthened. And but also, it would be good if people would take a stand against one of the major causes of inflation, which is rising house prices, And nobody talks about it, but foreign ownership of Canadian land is one of the things driving housing prices up more than anything. And Canadians have no idea how much land is owned by foreign interests. But I know a little bit more than some Canadians. I know a lot about how farmers now in the West can't afford their own land because it's so valuable. It's taxed based on its value, and the produce doesn't pay the tax. So they sell it, but they like farming, and they continue farming on leased land, which is like a feudal system.
All right, thank you. And recognizing that we're getting close to the end of the night, and my coworkers can certainly attest that when I'm talking politics and policy, I could be here for another couple hours, and I would actually love to. Well, thank you. But in the interest of time and respecting everybody's time with this, we are going to move to our wrap-up phase here. So you all have 10 minutes, boy. 2 minutes to wrap up with your closing remarks, and whatever it is you want to talk about, if you got something prepared or you want to address some comments tonight, there will be no rebuttals on this part. And Jeff, you are up first for closing remarks.
Well, thanks very much, Joel, and I want to remind everybody in the audience that this is Thanksgiving weekend coming up. Please give to Kawartha Food Share and share with those that are in more difficult circumstances than we all are. I want to thank Peterborough, the Kawartha's Chamber of Commerce, Peterborough DBIA, the Home Builders Association, and your TV for hosting us this evening. I also want to thank all of you in the audience. Whether you're watched in person or virtually, I appreciate you taking the time to get fully informed. This is a very important municipal election for our community, as we must choose the path forward. We all understand the challenges that we're faced, but my plan addresses one of the greatest concerns: how are we going to pay for it, and how are we going to fix it? It is for this reason that what I first announced was an economic action plan, of course, focusing on how to grow our economic base, to acquire those employment lands so young people in this community can seek their destiny right here. My plan starts by giving PKED the tools to market Peterborough aggressively in the province and throughout the globe. We need to expand our regional airport by adding a control tower and a customs border service. We need to expand our city limits to gain new employment and residential lands by entering into respectful negotiations with our neighboring county councils. Finally, we need to entice businesses to come here by making Peterborough the place to invest, live, work, and play. Attracting new family doctors, revitalizing our downtown, building new recreation facilities, and celebrating our arts community, and partnering with Tremper Fleming are just some of the ways we can make Peterborough a destination of choice for businesses. Peterborough, let's start building our tomorrow together.
All right, thank you. Brian.
I have my plan here prepared. It's a bare bones plan. I'm looking at the community working together and helping each other. That's what I'd like to see. I think it starts with cleaning up downtown and getting the drug use under control and healing as a community. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, thanks. Stephen.
Thank you, Brian, for always passing it over to me. And I want to thank the organizers of tonight's debate and for all of you that are able to attend here in person and those of you watching at home. You know, Peterborough is at a critical and pivotal point in its life. And I have a clear vision on what it takes to move our city forward, addressing our community's safety, climate change, and having a robust climate action plan, you know, leading and engaging to ensure that we're building the housing stock necessary for both our young people, our seniors, and those that own estate houses. You know, we have a clear plan around economic development, you know, working with our neighbors to ensure that there is critical employment lands, not waiting 30 years to get it done. We have a clear plan when it comes to our airport, knowing that the airport and with passenger service will bring new investment dollars to the community and new employers follow suit. We have a clear plan about reinventing our downtown core, maintaining our historic values in the buildings remaining, and building out our new downtown. On October 24th, I ask for your vote to implement a clear plan for Peterborough moving forward.
All right, thank you. Victor.
I'm going to talk more theoretically and generally about another problem facing Peterborough and Canada is a right-wing movement that we've seen the evidence of it in the convoy to Ottawa that stopped in Peterborough, and that Romana Dedulu character that wanted to arrest our police. And some people weren't happy with our mayor giving them the finger and not talking with Maxime Bernier. Myself, I would like to talk to those people, not because I agree with them, but there might be one thing that we could agree with. And myself, I've seen Canada be manipulated by our corporate media recently, but when I worked on the oil rigs from 1979 to 1982 until I was almost killed, putting myself through school in part of a winter, that was when the national energy policy came out. In my high school education, I learned actually how angry Canadians were that we were like a banana republic being raped by resource industries, especially the fossil fuel industry. And when Pierre Trudeau implemented the national energy policy, I actually thought he meant good. But I found out later that no, he did it to marginalize and co-opt that anger in Canadians at being exploited by foreign interests. And the national energy program that created Petro-Canada was designed to fail. And I can explain a lot more about that. But recently, a lot of people are angry about the COVID thing and their freedoms being breached, and there are some things to be angry about, and to just deny all of that is ridiculous. And people like Preston Manning and Pierre Poilievre are manipulating all of that to
Thanks,
boost
Victor.
their...
All right, thank you. Henry.
Let me begin by again thanking the organizers for this debate. Now, I know each and every one of you will draw your own conclusions from it. Here are mine. First, we have some excellent candidates for mayor, and I applaud all my 4 colleagues for stepping forward. It is disappointing that there are no women among them, but that day will come again. Second, when it comes to good governance, experience really does matter. It means we have a much better chance of getting ahead of the tough issues before they get ahead of us. Now, third, I do believe we have to be concerned about partisanship. The mayor's office is not a place for those who have made a career out of loyalty to one provincial party. That spells nothing but trouble in terms of the good relations and the support we will need from Queen's Park. Now, finally, policy is important, but it won't matter if we don't have a leader who can bring the councillors together with a clear vision. That, to me, will be the first most important job of the mayor. And you have my word, I will deliver it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to move into our closing part here. Thanks to all of our candidates for coming tonight. Big thank you to our partners, Peterborough and the Kawarthas Home Builders Association, Peterborough Downtown Business Improvement Area, and Your TV. Tonight's debate is being recorded, so if people liked it so much they want to watch it again, pkchamber.ca or Your TV. Big thanks to the Chamber team for all their support here tonight. I know I had more questions, and they can all attest. I sent them a big list of ones, and that wasn't even everything, guys. They all have email addresses, phone numbers. Some of them have websites, social media. Peterborough.ca, the city website, has that all listed. Please get in touch with them if you have more questions, concerns, suggestions for them. I know that they will make themselves and their teams available. Have a good night, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us.